Well now, good evening, friends. Andy Taylor here. What would you say if I told you that an old book discovered in a library could change two people's lives 40 years after they'd last seen each other? That a few handwritten notes tucked between pages could rewrite the ending of a love story everyone thought was finished? That's what happened in Mayberry in the spring of 1958, and it's one of the most beautiful stories I've ever been part of. This is a tale about love that waits, about words that endure, and about how sometimes the best endings come when you least expect them not. It started on a quiet Tuesday morning when Miss Clara, our town librarian, called me at the courthouse. "Sheriff Taylor," she said, sounding both excited and uncertain, "I've found something unusual, and I'm not quite sure what to do about it. Could you come by the library?" Now, Miss Clara wasn't one to make unnecessary fuss, so I told her I'd be right over. I found her at her desk with an ancient-looking book in front of her, open to reveal pages yellowed with age. "Sheriff," she said, "I was doing inventory this morning, checking older volumes we rarely circulate, and I found this." She gestured to the book, a collection of poetry from the 1920s. Inside are handwritten notes and what look like love letters. They're dated 1921 and 1922. They seem very personal. I wasn't sure if I should simply leave them there or try to find out more. I picked up the book carefully and began to examine it. Between the pages were several folded pieces of paper, brittle with age, covered in elegant handwriting. I unfolded one gently and began to read. "My dearest Maggie," it began, "I cannot express in mere words what your presence has brought to my life. When I see you in the library on Tuesday afternoons, my heart races like a schoolboy's, though I am a grown man of 23. The poetry in this book pales in comparison to the poetry of your smile, your laugh, your gentle spirit. I dream of a future where I might call you my wife. Yours always and forever, William." I felt something catch in my chest reading those words, written nearly 40 years ago by a young man clearly deeply in love. I picked up another note, this one in different handwriting. "My dear William," it read, "you asked me to meet you at the old oak tree by Myers Lake this Sunday. I will be there at 2 o'clock. My father does not approve of our courtship, as you know, but my heart is yours regardless of his wishes. Whatever the future holds, know that you have forever changed me. With all my love, Margaret." There were 5 more notes, each revealing more of their story. They'd met at the library in summer of 1921. William worked at his father's general store. Margaret was a banker's daughter whose father had different plans for her, plans that didn't include a young store clerk. Their notes spoke of stolen moments, secret meetings, dreams of a life together. But the final note, dated March of 1922, was different in tone. "William," Margaret had written, "my father is sending me to live with my aunt in Charleston. He says it is to give me opportunities, but we both know it is to separate us. I leave on Monday. I do not know when or if I will return. Please do not think poorly of me. Please know that I love you and always will. If circumstances were different, we would have our happiness. Perhaps in another life. Yours eternally, Margaret." I looked up at Miss Clara, who was watching me with tears in her eyes. "This is heartbreaking," I said. "They were in love, and circumstances tore them apart. Do you have any idea who they were?" Miss Clara shook her head. "The book has no name written in it. It must have been a personal copy that somehow ended up here over the years. But those names, William and Margaret, There might be records over the next few days. I did research. I found a William Hayes who'd worked at Hayes General Store. Records showed he'd never married, had lived in Mayberry until 1945 when he'd moved to Raleigh for work. He'd be in his early 60s now, if still alive. Finding Margaret was harder. I found mentions of a Margaret Williams, daughter of banker Charles Williams, who'd left for Charleston in 1922. The Williams family had left Mayberry shortly after. I called some colleagues in Charleston and Raleigh, asked them to check local records. It took nearly a week, but the information came back. William Hayes was alive, living in a small apartment in Raleigh, retired from accounting. Margaret Williams was living in Charleston, working part-time at a bookstore, despite being in her early 70s. Both of them, by remarkable coincidence, or perhaps fate, had never married. I sat in my office looking at this information, feeling the weight of it. Here were two people who'd loved each other deeply 40 years ago, separated by circumstance, who'd apparently never stopped loving each other enough to marry anyone else. And here I was, holding proof of their love in old letters hidden in a poetry book. Opie came into my office after school and found me deep in thought. "What's wrong, Pa?" he asked. I explained the situation to him. There were two people who loved each other a long time ago. They got separated. Now they're both old and alone. I found where they are, but I don't know if I should tell them about each other. Maybe bringing up the past would just cause pain. Opie thought about this seriously. "Pa," he said, "if you loved someone and never forgot them, wouldn't you want to know they never forgot you either? Even if you're old, wouldn't that matter?" Opie was right. I decided to reach out carefully. I wrote letters to both William and Margaret, explaining who I was, how I'd found their notes, and asking if they'd be willing to talk with me. I didn't tell either that I'd located the other. William's response came first, a phone call 3 days later. His voice was older, weathered, but grew thick with emotion. "Sheriff Taylor," he said, "I never thought I'd hear those words again. Maggie and I thought we'd have forever. When her father sent her away, I tried to find her, tried to write, but the letters came back unopened. Her father made sure of that. I waited for years, but she never came back. Eventually, I had to accept it. But I never forgot her, never stopped wondering what might have been." I asked the question that mattered most. "William, if I told you I knew where Margaret was, if I told you she never married either, would you want to see her again?" There was a long silence. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "Sheriff, I'm 62 years old. I've lived alone for 40 years. If there's even a chance to see Maggie again, to tell her what she meant to me, I'd travel any distance. Yes. God, yes." Margaret's response came as a letter, written in handwriting I recognized from the notes, still elegant, though shakier with age. "Dear Sheriff Taylor," she wrote, "receiving your letter was like having the past reach out and touch me. I never stopped thinking about William, never stopped regretting that I didn't fight harder to stay, that I let my father's ambitions override my own heart. I've lived a quiet life here in Charleston. I work at a bookstore, surrounded by words and stories, but my own story ended the day I left Mayberry. If William is still alive, if he remembers me with even a fraction of the feeling I've held for him all these years, I would very much like to know." I now had two people, separated by hundreds of miles and 4 decades, both still in love with each other, both having lived incomplete lives because of a separation neither truly wanted. I knew what I had to do. I called William first. "I've been in touch with Margaret," I told him. "She feels the same way you do. She never married. She never forgot you. Would you be willing to come to Mayberry? I'd like to arrange for you both to meet here, where your story began." He agreed immediately, his voice trembling. I called Margaret next with the same information. She cried on the phone, then composed herself and said yes, she'd come. We arranged for them both to arrive on a Saturday afternoon 2 weeks later. I didn't tell either much about the plan, just to meet me at the library at 2 o'clock. The town, which had heard about this story through the Mayberry grapevine, was invested. Miss Clara worked with Aunt Bee to make the library look special. They brought fresh flowers, made everything neat and welcoming. The old poetry book with the letters was placed on a table in the reading area. Saturday came. I was nervous. What if 40 years had changed them too much? What if the reality couldn't match the memory? William arrived first, driving up from Raleigh. He was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, gray-haired, wearing a carefully pressed suit. His hands shook slightly. "Is she here?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "She's coming from Charleston. Let me show you something while we wait." I took him inside to the book. He saw it and stopped, his breath catching. "That's our book," he said softly. "Maggie loved poetry. We used to read to each other. I thought this was lost forever." A few minutes later, a car pulled up outside. Through the window, I saw an elderly woman getting out, moving carefully but with determination. She had white hair, but her posture was still graceful. "That's her," William whispered, and the look on his face was something I'll never forget. 40 years fell away in that moment. I went to the door to greet her. "Margaret?" She nodded. "Sheriff Taylor, thank you for," and then she saw through the doorway into the library. She saw William standing there. Her hand went to her mouth. "William," she whispered. They moved toward each other slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter the moment. They stopped a few feet apart, just looking at each other. William spoke first. "Maggie," he said, and his voice broke. I waited so long." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I know," she said. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I left. I should have fought harder." He shook his head. "Your father, circumstances, none of that was your fault. I understood. But God, Maggie, I missed you. Every single day for 40 years. She closed the distance and took his hands. "I never married," she said. "I could never love anyone else. It was always you, William. Always only you." He pulled her into an embrace then, and they stood there holding each other, crying. After a while, William and Margaret sat down together, still holding hands, and began to talk. They talked for hours, catching up on 40 years. He told her about his work, his quiet life in Raleigh. She told him about Charleston, about the bookstore, about the life she'd built that had always felt incomplete. Before Margaret left that evening, she and William stood together looking at the old poetry book, reading the letters they'd written so long ago. "These words saved our story," Margaret said softly. "If you hadn't found them, Sheriff, we'd have lived the rest of our lives apart, never knowing the other still cared." Over the following months, William and Margaret's story continued beautifully. William retired and moved back to Mayberry. Margaret closed up her life in Charleston and moved back too. They spent every day together, making up for lost time. They'd take walks around Myers Lake, visit old places, create new memories. 6 months after their reunion, they were married in a small ceremony at the Mayberry church. It wasn't a young couple's wedding with all the fanfare. It was something deeper, more meaningful. Two people who'd loved each other across 4 decades, finally speaking the vows they'd always wanted to speak. In his vows, William said something I'll never forget. "Margaret, we lost 40 years. We can't get those back. But what we have now is more precious because we know how rare it is. I promise to treasure every moment. Every morning I wake up next to you. You were worth waiting for. You were worth every lonely year." Margaret's vows were equally moving. "William, I spent 40 years regretting that I left. But maybe we had to live those years apart to understand how much we meant to each other. I don't regret anymore. I'm grateful. Grateful we found each other again. Grateful for every day ahead." They lived together in Mayberry for several more years, happy years, full of quiet joy. They became fixtures in the community, this elderly couple so clearly in love. When William passed away in 1963, peacefully with Margaret beside him, the whole town mourned. But Margaret said something that stuck with me. "I got 5 years with him," she said. 5 years of waking up next to the man I loved. Some people don't get even 1 day of that kind of happiness. I got 5 years. I'm grateful." Margaret stayed in Mayberry until her own passing in 1967. The old poetry book with its precious letters was donated to the library, placed in a special display case with a plaque telling their story. It became one of the library's treasured possessions. Looking back, I'm struck by how much hangs on small moments, small decisions. What if Miss Clara hadn't opened that book? What if I'd decided not to search for them? Any of those small decisions would have changed everything. But they went the other way, and 2 lives were transformed. I learned that it's never too late for happiness, never too late for love. William and Margaret proved that wrong. They found each other again in their 60s and 70s, and their love was no less real, no less powerful than when they were young dreamers. I also learned about the power of persistence, of holding on to hope even when it seems foolish. That kind of faithfulness says something profound about the human spirit. Opie carried the lessons with him as he grew. Years later, he told me that William and Margaret had taught him what real commitment looked like. Not the flashy, dramatic kind of love in movies, but the steady, patient, enduring kind that waits and hopes and believes. The story became one of Mayberry's favorites, told and retold. Young couples would visit the library to see the book in letters, to be inspired by a love that survived 40 years of separation. And people would remember, when times got hard in their own relationships, that if love is real and true, it can survive anything. Well, now, that's the story of the library book that changed everything. Of 2 hearts that waited 40 years to find each other again. And of how a few old letters prove that true love never dies. It just waits for its moment to bloom again. It's a story about patience and faith, about the power of words to carry love across time, and about how sometimes the universe gives us second chances when we least expect them, but most need them. I hope this story reminds you that it's never too late for happiness, never too late to find or reclaim love. Come back and visit again real soon, friends. Until then, this is Andy Taylor saying goodnight from Mayberry. Remember, love worth having is love worth waiting for. And the best love stories sometimes take a lifetime to complete. Take care now.